Hey guys, present day Nate here with a question for you. What separates truly elite drummers from average ones? Well, in today's video, we're going to get into it. Today's video is one I actually recorded 2 years ago, but which has never seen the light of day. The reason is that it's my audition video for the Drummio appearance. And since my editor is in Spain for one more week, I decided to share it with you guys with this new intro. The editors at Drummio were really good. They cut my 25-minute thing down to like 10 minutes, but you may want to dive in deeper and see the whole 25 minutes if you're a true drum nerd. So with that introduction, let's turn it over to 2021 Nate. What makes great drummers? Better than average ones. You may think you know the answer. In fact, everybody thinks they know the answer. Chops. Talent. It's his chops. He's born with it. He's really fast. Look, some people are just born with it. Speed of his hands. You can't teach that. But in my experience, from hearing the questions people ask and the lessons they request, very few people understand what it actually is. More on that in a second, but first, backstory. A few months ago, Drummio posted a challenge video, which is essentially just to play along with some crazy metronome placements.
Now this is a metronome track you could download as well. And I would love to see your submission and you playing along to this metronome track. Then you'll hear that audible, different sounding click, and then the click is gonna shift to the E's. Then after 8 bars, the click's gonna shift to the ands.
I was like, this is it. I'm the crazy metronome placement guy. So I got out the camera, gave it the old college try. Then shared it on my Instagram. To my astonishment, Drummio noticed and reposted it to their feed, which got me thinking, if Drummio's interested in this, it means they're also interested in alternate ways of thinking about timekeeping besides just focusing really hard, which is something I've been talking about for a good little while. It's not about trying hard, it's about seeing clearly. And maybe, just maybe, they're also hip to this parking spot thing. The idea that each beat is like a big parking spot. You want to find the right spot within that beat to situate your beat, which is a thing I got from my buddy Ian Allison, by the way.
Beatronics.
Anyway, that's when it hit me. Maybe there's something I can do for the subscribers to Drummio, something I could do for Drummio Nation that's uniquely me, but also jumps off of that timekeeping challenge. So today, for the tiny audience of just the folks at Drummio into whose hands I can get this video, and that might be no one at all if nobody watches this, my little contribution to the canon, the 3 real reasons great drummers are better than we are. Stay tuned. First, I have to answer an objection. What about chops? After all, look at Drummio artist Larnell Lewis. Look at Instagram star and Drummio coach Sarah Thaler. We can't do that, so maybe that's why they're better than we are. And here's the issue with that. I could send you down a rabbit hole of more chops. Where you're doing finger strengthening exercises with a dumbbell and snorting elephant steroids. And enough! Yes, technique is important, as we'll hear later. But if it was all you focus on, you'd miss the far more fundamental ways great drummers are better. Listen to Larnell Lewis play this. Zero chops. Listen to Sarah here. Not a chop in sight. How about another chop hand? Thomas Pridgen. Now, can you do that? You might think you can, but can you really? Let's go to the kit. Reason number 1 great drummers are better than you. The parking space. And I figured I should do most of this behind the kit because that's where I'd be at Drummio headquarters. Anyway, I'm gonna play you a basic beat. Maybe you think that sounds good, maybe you think that sounds bad. In a minute, I'm going to tell you why it's better than I used to sound, but still not as good as Steve Jordan. Now, let's talk about Steve Jordan. Here's a little of Steve. I use Steve to illustrate this first way great drummers are better, because Steve doesn't have to play any chops, and he's obviously better. And just like Pridgeon, if you think you could do that, go record yourself. Listen back, then listen to Steve, then listen to yourself, then listen to Steve again. Now let's talk about the parking spot again. Let's say there's a spot dead center in the metronome beat where you can park the snare drum. And let's say there's a little fudge factor around that beat. In fact, let me grab ye olde whiteboard. Let's say there are a few thousandths of a second on either side of where in time we could place that snare drum note. And let's say that's the parking spot. You could park the beat a little early, or you could park the beat a little late. But it's even deeper, because your snare note is very narrow. So it's a lot more like a motorcycle in a parking spot than a car. And it's about how precisely you can tell where in that spot the motorcycle is. Because great drummers hear things in higher resolution. Let me explain. Let's say we're an average drummer, like a beginner to an intermediate. When we try to place our note in the beat, it's a little like having a really big motorcycle and a really small parking spot. Like this cartoon I drew. We're lucky already if we don't hit any cars around us, let alone hit the dead center of that spot. A good analogy might be a typical intermediate drum beat. It's vaguely inconsistent, it's a little rushy draggy, sort of like Thomas Pridgeon's drum store companion. Now, say you work for a few years and you've got a smaller motorcycle. Something like this guy. Say you've got about one motorcycle's width on each side in the parking spot. So there's a left, a right, and a center of any spot where you could park a beat. We might call that an advanced drummer, somebody who plays pretty consistently in the center of the beat. Just to put myself on the spot, I'll demonstrate. But here's my bet. Steve Jordan's got an even smaller motorcycle. If we can see in 3-bit, he can see in like 13-bit. That would be like having a beat that's so big that for a small song, there are like 6 motorcycle widths on either side of him, as you can see by my perfect cartoon. That means where an intermediate drummer can only place his note in the beat or outside of it, and a decent drummer can play early, on time, or late, Steve can play 1/6 early, all the way up to 5/6 early. And the same thing on the late side. The best analogy is what Morpheus said to Neo.
What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
Okay, but how do we do this? I've got 2 crazy metronome placements you're gonna hate me for. Actually, let's just review this whole thing for a second. Most people practice with a metronome on the downbeat. I mean, I haven't taken a survey, but I'm pretty sure. Anyway, when we play with the metronome on the beat, we're practicing locking up with it. But there are 2 problems. First, we get used to it. Then we don't hear the tiny flaws in our beat anymore. Kind of like that person's house where they own a lot of cats and to them it smells normal, but then you come over and... By the way, nothing against cats. I love cats. So it's the same with your playing. You get used to hearing the metronome in one spot. Then if it's a little early or a little late, you don't really hear it anymore just because you're used to it. So we change it so we can hear it with fresh ears. The other reason is you can follow the metronome if it's on the downbeat, which means you don't have to really think about supplying the time yourself. If it's on the offbeat, you have to make a guess every time you play the beat, and then the metronome will tell you if you're right or wrong. Got it? So for the parking space, we're trying to improve our ear so we can hear more like Steve Jordan, or Thomas, or Larnell. So, metronome placement number 1, 16th offbeats. Allow me to demonstrate. When you first try this, it'll feel really janky, but get used to hearing it there. Then you'll notice how much your beat pushes and pulls. Do this for a few weeks, and the next time you're listening to a song, it'll be like you hear it in 4D.
I know Kung Fu.
One more crazy metronome placement to scramble your brain. First and last 16th. This is really good for your 8th offbeats, which tend to rush without you even knowing. Again, it'll suck for the first week, but give it time. Finally, remember to turn the metronome off. Or at least switch it to quarters. You've created this higher resolution hearing, so now apply it to your playing across the board. Things will suddenly sound out of place. You'll hear all sorts of places where you're rushing and dragging that you didn't used to hear. Stick with it, it's a long process. I don't really have anything to say here, but just usually we cut away between the two sections so that it's not just one long, uninterrupted. Reason 2 great drummers are better than you. Cleanliness. Here's a clip of Larnell Lewis playing a groove. Now, I'm going to try to play a groove sloppily. Okay, let's say I'm not rushing or dragging per se. So what makes Larnell's groove better than mine? Is something I call cleanliness. Larnell is doing 3 big things. First, he's getting a consistent sound out of every drum. That means his rim shots are all the same volume and they're coming through. His kick drum is consistent. He's not hitting any rims. He's hitting the center of the snare drum with his unaccented strokes. Next, his subdivisions are the same volume and the same distance apart. That means when he's playing ghosted 16ths, they're even. And the same volume. He's also not rushing the kick drum in any predictable places like this. Instead of. Finally, when his limbs are supposed to be playing together, they are. Instead of. In aggregate, I call this playing clean. Listen to Thomas Pridgeon again. Thomas is catching rim shots, the same volume every time. His subdivisions are consistent when he wants them to be. And when his limbs are supposed to be playing together, they're really playing together. Not sure if you're a clean player? Record yourself playing this. Record yourself playing this. If anything's inconsistent or flamming, don't be alarmed, just fix it. Oh, and here's how you do that. For most grooves, the sloppiness happens in 2 places. First, when we're doing a 16-note pickup and then a downbeat with a kick drum, at the same time we're doing a drop catch with the hats. Here's what I mean. So what I recommend to a lot of my students is that they practice this like a rudiment every day, like this. The next most common one is rushing the kick drum on the first note of a double. So if we have like a samba beat, the first kick note is going to tend to rush because we don't have the confidence that if we wait on it, we're going to be able to play the first and the second in quick enough succession. So instead of, you'll tend to get instead of. So here's the exercise I'd recommend for this one. 3, 4. And guys, this is really just scratching the surface here, but we're doing triage, okay? Next thing is your drum sounds and subdivisions. I'm gonna give you a couple exercises for that, but also encourage you guys to improvise on your own with this stuff. First, idioms around the drums with no unaccented notes on the snare. There's one, here's another. Next, incorporating connecting notes on the snare. That's one, here's another. Here's one more. And our last secret of why great drummers are better incorporates the next thing we were kind of going to do anyway, which is improvising. But hang on, we got to do this right. Guys, 2023 Nate back from the future with a quick message. If you like the material in this video, I'm actually shooting a brand new free course that goes way deeper into the improvisation section of this video. This is a course that will include exercises, videos, transcriptions, and it'll all be completely free, but it's only available to my list. If you want me to email that to you when I release it, just click the link below the player and tell me where to send it. Okay, back to 2021 Nate. Scene change again because visual variety. The last thing we're going to talk about is buffering errors. You know how when you try to play a video and the Wi-Fi is not great, you get a buffering error. As the video streams, it caches a certain amount of data, like a cushion ahead of what you're actually viewing. You can see it on YouTube as a gray bar in front of the little time cursor. Anyway, your brain does the same thing. And great players have this together in a big way. So, reason 3 great drummers are better than you. Flow. What if I asked you to play a solo right now? Like 3, 4. Could you do it without thinking? With clean, original ideas? Without repeating yourself? Without playing some kind of prefabricated lick you learned? Without buffering errors? Last year, I asked hundreds of drummers to send me clips of them soloing. And what I saw overwhelmingly was people who were struggling to play strong ideas with continuity. Forget Larnell. People can't even play this. We'll talk about how to fix that in a hot second, but first, I read this in all my comments. Are you somebody who thinks the primary difference between you and Larnell Lewis is hand speed?
Do you believe that my being stronger or faster has anything to do with my muscles in this place?
Take that challenge. Record yourself improvising anything. 3, 4. How's it sound? Is it clean? Is it original? I'll let you be the judge. Again, just scratching the surface, but here's what I'd recommend. Creative constraints. I'll give you 3. Snare, kick, hats only. No rim shots. Quarters, 8s. 3, 4. Both toms, kick, and hats. Quarters, eights, triplets. 3, 4. Snare with rim shots, kick, hats, and floor tom. Quarters, eights, 16ths. You can come up with whole matrices of these things. And what this does for you is it frees you up from thinking about your licks and allows you to just focus on phrases. Plus the whole cat house smell thing. You see and hear in a different context, so stuff that you're used to is fresh again and you can see it more clearly. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that. And if you made it that far, you probably want to go deeper, which is why I want to tell you about this brand new mini course I just filmed this past week. If you dug the third part of this video about improvisational flow and having ideas at the ready, and not making buffering errors, this new video goes way deeper into that. It's a bite-sized 10-minute video workshop with specific concepts you can start working on in the shed today. Now, I'm still editing this video, but if you'd like me to send it to you for free when it's ready, which has to be the end of this week, just click the link below the player and tell me where to send it on the next page. Dudes, it's been real. Always enjoy these. See you again next week in another lesson of the week.